We spend so much time developing exams and evaluation tools for our students, but how do we know that they have effectively validated learning that we expected to happen? Well, we are continuing our series, and this is actually our last phase of the series where we're talking about what are those 5 essential steps to follow to ensure that our exam analysis is effectively sharing with us and really identifying whether or not our students were knowledgeable about the content. If you haven't already, go ahead and print out your study worksheet. This is going to make sure that you stay focused as we walk through the content together for the snapshot. The 5 steps that we've talked about so far, we will summarize those at the end and make sure also that you go ahead and subscribe to this channel so the next time that a snapshot is released, you'll be notified right away. When we're looking at the 5 steps that we're following, we are talking about in this snapshot, number 3, which is being able to review statistical data for the overall test results, and then also looking at the deeper dive. What corrections do we need to make? What revisions do we need to make related to our exams? Or maybe we need to make some curricular changes that's associated with the content that we've included. When we're looking at statistical data, there are a couple of elements that you want to make sure you're knowledgeable about. When you're looking at the blueprint, we know that some colleagues have this feeling, the feeling of overwhelm, of anxiety associated with the content, and we don't want you to feel that way. So step number 1 that we like to talk about is a mistake that many colleagues make, and that is the detailed exam blueprint. Now, when we neglect the content that's listed on the exam blueprint, this is what happens. We start to overthink and really justify our understanding of the concepts. We don't want you to do that. We want to make sure that you're looking at the blueprint as is in order to effectively go through the details that you will need to be knowledgeable about in preparation for the exam. And if you haven't printed out that blueprint already, you want to make sure you do that as a first step. And then the next consideration we want you to think about is purchasing the right resources. Okay, now when it comes to exam analysis, we are still using Billings and Halstead 6th edition as our primary source. And you want to use chapter 25, specifically starting on page 485 to help you kind of walk through each of the elements related to exam analysis. Okay, so you want to make sure, number 1, you print out the detailed test blueprint, and it's on the nln.org website. And then second of all, you want to print out the study worksheet. You can find that right here in the description. And then the third step is to make sure you have Billings and Halstead. In order to effectively close your knowledge gaps, it's going to be really important that you use the right resources. Okay, so we want you to make sure you have that detailed outline that's going to help you walk through the concepts and ultimately the content areas that you want to focus on as you're moving forward on your journey to achieve CNE success. What's important to know is really centered around 4 key elements that you must avoid. Number 1 is not analyzing the results. Number 2 is not tracking student performance. Number 3 is not adjusting that course content. And number 4 is not providing sufficient feedback. All right, so let's break each of them down just a little bit more. When we talk about not analyzing exam results, what's the number 1 reason why colleagues are not able to take that extra time to analyze the results? All right, so I want to give you all a second, especially if you're watching this live, to go ahead and write down why is it that you think colleagues are not taking that extra time to analyze the results. All right, so if you're writing right now, put it in the chat as you are thinking about what those specific areas are that may lead to us not fully analyzing the results. All right, so if you wrote down lack of knowledge, lack of comprehension of the data, and the definition of the data associated with the exam analysis, you are correct. So the fact that we don't understand what is a p-value, what is a point by serial index, certainly can contribute to our inability to thoroughly review exam results. All right, and then number 2 is not tracking student performance. We want to see, when we look at that blueprint, remember that was in our snapshot, the first snapshot in this series, we want to see whether or not there was strong alignment with our blueprint, with the content, and ultimately with the results of the exam. So let me give you an example. If we have 3 questions related to sterile technique on our exam, and we have a PBI that's ineffective for at least at the 0.20 level or 0.10 level, then we want to take a deeper dive looking at our content to determine how deep did we go into sterile technique, and if there's an opportunity to add more content or to create more formative assessments. And then not adjusting course content, well, it aligns with our blueprint. So we want to step back, take a more general look of how our exam performed, and then we want to look at the deeper questions that we have on the exam to validate that we did, in fact, close the loop on those concepts for our students. And then sufficient feedback not providing that, we want to build on prior learning, prior comprehension of concepts. We do that through scaffolding, right? We're building on prior knowledge that students have. We realize that our semester 1 students are going to have a different level of knowledge than our semester 4 students. So what's your number? Go ahead and write that down right now. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 you feel lost, 5 you feel ready to teach, okay? Based on the content that we've talked about so far, how confident are you in your knowledge related to these concepts? The PBI range for correct answers. Remember that PBI really is about our ability to discriminate, right, to separate our high-performing students from our weak-performing students. And that's what that point by zero index really gives us a story about. Our goal is that our students that are most knowledgeable about the exam content, so our high-performing students, are going to perform better on the exam questions and choosing the correct answer more often than our low-scoring students. All right, so let's break down this PBI range as one example of data points that we want to look at. Greater than 0.40 is going to indicate very good, but any number that is 0.20 or higher, we do want to see as favorable. However, that sweet spot really is 0.30 and above. So it's marginal at that 0.2, 0.29. It just means that we probably want to take a closer look and see exactly what was going on with our STEM and our distractors, how effective were each of them, and looking at our blueprint as well. And then if we get in the lower ranges, as an example, we talked earlier about 0.20, that is going to indicate that, we probably need to take a deeper dive to discern where was the disconnect, where did we lose our students related to that specific content area. So that's step number 3 that we've talked about, is looking at the exam overall, and now we want to take a deeper look at the actual questions on the exam. Were they effective? Did the distractors do their job? We see this example where we have B, we know is the correct answer. We have a p-value of 0.25. And look at what happened to our PBI. Very concerning, right? We have a negative 0.13. Did you know that the PBI could be negative? Well, we certainly don't ever want it to be, but it's moving in the wrong direction. Go back, if this is a muddy point for you, and take a look at the previous slides where we looked at the PBI range. Okay, so if that's a gap area for you, you might want to go ahead and take a screenshot. Let's just go back so you can have a second to do that. Go ahead and take a screenshot if this is a muddy point for you. And this is aligned with the content from the McDonald book in 2018. And you want to make sure that you understand at each point in that range what is going on with the actual value, okay, of the PBI that we're seeing on our statistical analysis report. We see, based on this example, that our B, the B option, is the correct option. We see the p-value of 0.25, and we have a negative PBI of 0.13. Well, we know it was ineffective. It did not effectively attract those high-scoring students more often than the low-scoring students, so we would want to revise that. Our next step is to take a look at the actual example and to analyze what are the key elements that we are going to focus on, and what are we going to do with that information. When you are preparing for the C&E exam, it's exciting, I know, to be able to analyze the examples that we're going through in our thought-provoking questions, but what you want to also think about is what are you going to do with that information now that you know what the PBI is for the correct option and the incorrect option. And that's what we're doing in this synopsis, okay? So if you haven't already written down the details about what's going on in this specific example, this is the kind of detailed review that you want to do, okay? So first of all, we know that the correct answer has a negative PVI. We know that option C was not chosen, and it is a non-distractor. We wanted to attract learners that weren't knowledgeable about the content to choose A, C, and D more often than our high-scoring students, and that did not happen. We also know that our distractors were ineffective, right? We see that option D has a positive PBI and was chosen by most students, indicating students were probably confused and guessed the answer. Okay, so that's option D, which was not the correct answer. We want to consider if the item was miskeyed. Was there an error with the entry of the question with the distractors? And then we know there was also weak discrimination. Okay, so this is going to cause us to go back and take a deeper dive at our blueprint. Let's take a look at our statistical analysis and determine exactly what story the data is telling us. And then the third step is to do an exam review. So let's have a conversation with our students. That's that qualitative element, and find out what is it that attracted them to option A, option B, and option D, because we can see that the C option, we didn't have any students who chose that option, right? We see the p-value is 0 and the PBI is not measurable. So that's going to indicate to us that no students chose C option. And then the next step we want to take is to think about what revisions do we need to make to our exams or to our content. As we take that deeper dive with our students, we'll be able to better understand, better really comprehend what they were thinking during our exam review in discussing some of these key concepts that were included on the exam. 5 steps, just to summarize where we started from and where we're ending with our series today. First of all is to make sure we're completing that blueprint. That's the first step in developing a valid and reliable exam, is making sure we have an effective blueprint, right, that doesn't fail, that we take the time to align it with the content, with the objectives, with our leveling of the cognitive learning domain, just to make sure we have difficulty levels across multiple areas of the cognitive learning domain. And then test development. How much time are we allocating per question? And then steps 3 through 5 are the ones that we covered today. Number 3, we're going to look at the overall test data. Number 4, we're going to look at each item's data, and then we're going to make the necessary revisions accordingly. Now, I know this was quick. You might have thought this was short. Some of you might have thought this was long, but here's the good news. We are here to support you on your journey to achieve Nurse Educator Excellence. So if you need more help, reach out. Right here in the description, you're going to see an item analysis bootcamp link. That means that you don't have to wait, right? You can clarify any muddy points that you have today. Once you have access and have registered for the bootcamp, it is self-paced. You will be able to access that content indefinitely. It never expires, right? It doesn't disappear, and it's additional resources to help you. We have a learning guide on item analysis, and we also have some additional resources that are listed right here in the description. We hope that this snapshot has been helpful as you chart your way to achieve Nurse Educator Excellence and to achieve certification on the NLN Nurse Educator exam. Reach out to us if you have questions, info@drsellarseducate.com. Until next time, have a great one, everybody.